Dr. Kenna. My name is Wesley McDonald, and I will be answering the question uh, part two for 3.3 discussion. And the first question has to do with the overall response for propaganda and how it shapes perspectives about people and other cultures. And the second part to that, do you see evidence of ethnic focused propaganda today? And as I was thinking on that question, um, Professor Teruhisa Horio of Tokyo University, within the first propaganda film, said this quote, and it really stuck with me. He said, propaganda leads people over and over to something without leaving them room to consider it. Propaganda leads people over and over to something, leads people over and over to something without leaving them room to consider it. And I would say that that is in my mind, that's a perfect example of what propaganda really is, what it does. It continually tells you a story without um, really giving you an opportunity to buffet it or to really even examine it. And I've seen that a lot today in media, especially, is narratives continually are told, whether that is on immigration or illegal immigration, or even recently, do you see evidence today, the Jussie Smollett case, where initially it was being touted as a case that was a prime example of an African American gay man that was being attacked. Um, and it quickly changed the narrative. You had celebrities and all these famous people come out and support. And I know this case is still controversial, but this one seems to be the most relevant case culturally right now because the narrative flipped as soon as news started coming out to the opposite of the narrative. You had these celebrities coming back, apologizing, taking back their statements, um, and then it went the other way. Then other media started saying, "Well, this is a perfect example of, um, the opposite way that propaganda works." Um, and they started swinging propaganda the other way towards Jussie and, in some ways, even African American relations, and it's a mess. Um, so yes, I think the overall response is that it's still going on and it's still very prevalent, especially in this time and age. The second question: are we setting a standard of treatment? Um, the principles of Christian decency in the propaganda wars video. You know, I that was a remarkable statement, but it was expected. The book that we're reading right now, chapter one, it talks about norms in society. And pre 1950, there was a typical norm of Christian values. And, effectively by adding in that statement, that Christian statement, they're saying we have God's blessing, or they're projecting to be doing it within a belief system that has God's blessing. We are God's nation and we are doing this God's way. So it gives people that both sides, there were others that were not pro internment camps. So it silences their voice a little bit because they're saying, okay, as long as they're fairly treated, and it's just until the war ends. And then you have the other side that would have liked to see them imprisoned or, similar to other internment camps other countries had. And they're quieted because they're saying, okay, we're treating them well and we're a model and we're a Christian, we're treating them with Christian dignity and decency. And so I would say overall, it was it was to calm the masses. It was the conclusion that I came out to, and let them know that they're safe and that they're not harming these people, even though they lost their livelihoods and their homes and their occupations. The reaction to the overall message from the government for forcing the Japanese into internment camps, I think the overall message was fear. Um, they were trying to abate fear of the populace against these Japanese. The Japanese at the time, I did some research on this, that they largely stuck together within their people groups, so they were not well integrated. So you had large groups of Japanese immigrants, and um, there had never been an enemy like this before. The emperor of Japan, to kind of look at both sides of the issue, was considered a god, and he projected himself, and the Japanese people saw him as such. And so, I think there's a cultural dissidence going on where the Americans don't really know how to deal with such things like that. And largely, you have this fear. What are they going to do to us? How are they in this response out of fear? The perspective of George Takei was really, really valuable and really interesting. I mean, it was eye-opening. They literally set them up in a condition where they had to basically be disloyal on paper to the government, and it really set them up to fail. And the perspective that he gave really showed how flawed the system was and how fearful the system was. Once again, with no respect for culture, they send this survey out way after the fact and expect these Japanese who have lost effectively everything to pledge allegiance to the flag right away and not show any discouragement. And that, no matter how loyal they were, the survey questions just really caught them in a bad place. So finally, the first steps to take would be provisions, making sure they were taken care of, reintegration, the church really stepping out. And I read where Detroit churches actually did this. They came alongside a coalition of churches to reintegrate and help them rebuild. And that was the third part, to rebuild their lives, their businesses, their livelihoods, and to do it with the church backing them, to show them Christ. Because ultimately, perfect love casts out fear, to show them you are loved, you're welcome here, and you have a place. Thank you.